So my tip for you this week is about how to tap when you want to basically circumvent the feeling of something. That would be either if you don't know what you're feeling around an issue, or maybe the feeling is so overwhelming or it's so charged that you're worried you're going to get flooded or overwhelmed by it, and you really just don't want to deal with it. And actually, there is a technique in tapping where you can actually just tap on the sensory information. And that means like the things that you gather with your senses around an event. So specifically around the memory of something unpleasant. It doesn't necessarily have to be some big, huge trauma, but we just call it trauma, meaning that it is created like an unpleasant feeling or pattern in your system. So it could be a memory of something as simple as maybe somebody teasing you as a child, or perhaps if you got into a fight with a loved one or something, and it's just this memory that's nagging at you, and maybe you replay it over and over in your mind. It could even be something as recent as a conversation with a boss earlier today. And later on, like, you just can't stop thinking about it. So rather than, what I'm always saying is think about the feeling around it, rather than the feeling that you have around the conversation or the event, what I suggest you do is that you tap on the sensory information. So for example, let's use the conversation with the boss as an example. Let's just say that you were sitting across from your boss at a desk. And so sensory information would be, while you were having this unpleasant charged conversation, you may have felt the chair underneath you. So you felt the feeling of the chair. That's physically feeling the chair. You may have smelled something, like maybe someone down the hall was in the break room making food and you smelled it, or popcorn. We'll just say popcorn. So there was a smell of popcorn in the air. Perhaps maybe the boss said something very specific to you and you heard the words. So you're actually hearing the boss say whatever it was they said. So that's hearing. Again, these are all things that come from the senses. So what you would do is you would choose one at a time. So I had 3 things as an example. I have the feeling of the chair, the smell of popcorn, and the sound of your boss's voice. So you just want to kind of rate them and see which one maybe it feels the best to start with. It doesn't really matter, but you're going to want to start with it. So what you would do is, like, for instance, and you can tap along with me if you want. It doesn't have to be about a boss. It can be about anything. For all benefits, right? You could say, even though I had this unpleasant conversation with my boss, I'm willing to consider accepting. This is how I feel. Even though I had this unpleasant conversation with my boss, I can't stop thinking about it. It really bothers me. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to think about this feeling. Okay, I accept that's what's coming up for me. Even though I had this really unpleasant conversation with my boss, don't like the way it makes me feel. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm willing to consider that it might not always be in my mind, and maybe I can let it go. Okay, those are your setup series. Now we're going to tap down. We're just going to start with, let's start with the feeling of the chair. Okay, so I'm sitting in this chair across from my boss. I can feel the feeling of the chair underneath me. The chair feels hard. The chair feels cold. The chair felt uncomfortable. And I can feel the feeling of this chair, and I don't like the way it feels. Now, I'm just making this stuff up, guys, but you can just add whatever's real for you. So go back to the side of the hand, okay? And we're gonna say, while I was feeling the chair underneath me, I could smell popcorn. Okay, so there's your smell. I could smell popcorn coming from somewhere. The smell of popcorn. While I sat on this chair, I could smell popcorn in the air. While I was sitting on this chair across from my boss, I could smell popcorn coming from somewhere. And I was sitting on a chair. I could feel the chair underneath me, sitting across from my boss, smelling popcorn. Okay, you guys, so now you see I've got the 2 things layered. Then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to add the 3rd thing. I'm going to add the hearing the boss's voice. So while I was sitting on this chair, and I could smell this popcorn coming from down the hall somewhere. I heard my boss say, whatever it is, you just fill in the blank here, you guys. And then, so while I was sitting on this chair, I could feel this chair underneath me, and I could smell this popcorn coming from down the hall. And then my boss said, blank. And while I could feel the chair underneath me, and I could smell this popcorn coming from down the hall, I heard my boss say blank. All right, great. Now, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna wrap it all up, okay? We're just gonna wrap it up, and we're gonna just release, okay? So even though, we'll do another setup. Even though all this happened and it was unpleasant, I'm willing to release it now. I don't need it anymore. Now we're just gonna tap through and we're gonna say release. 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 I'm going under the arms now. Release. Let's go to the top of the head to wrap up. I deeply and completely release this now. Take a deep breath. Okay, good. Tune into the heart center if that feels good to you. And there you have tapped on the event, and I would suspect that now you probably aren't as attached to what happened as you were before. And we didn't take the SUDS level, but if you did take the SUDS level around it, you'll find that it's gone down. Now, if it hasn't gone down or you're still feeling charged around it, just keep tapping on it and find one sense to tap on. So the one that stands out the most, just tap on that about 3 to 4 rounds and just stay focused on the one sensory piece of information that really stands out to you and see how that works for you. So great, I hope that really works for you. And I can tell you that this technique works wonders for my clients, and I've seen it work for other people. It works for me when I'm working with a coach. It is a very powerful way to release a feeling around the memory without having to get like re-traumatized by it.